Welcome to The Explainer. I am so thrilled to have you here today because we're going to unpack a psychological superpower that almost all of us use, yet almost all of us try to hide. We're talking about the hidden genius of talking to yourself. I'm going to guide you through the fascinating science behind this incredibly common habit, and by the end of this explainer, I promise, you're going to see your own mind in a completely new light.
All right, let's dive right in. You know that feeling when you're tearing apart the living room, frantically muttering, "Where are my keys?" Or honestly, maybe you've had a full-blown, award-winning argument with yourself in the shower at 3 a.m. after realizing you just ate 3 bowls of cereal. If you're nodding along right now, you are definitely not alone.
Look, you get caught doing it, your cheeks get hot, and you immediately look around to make sure no one heard you. We totally validate that embarrassment because society has kind of taught us to hide it. But I want to introduce a complete paradigm shift right here, right now. The big question is it crazy or is it genius? Well, I am here to tell you that talking to yourself is absolutely not a sign of impending madness. It is actually a strong indicator of a highly sophisticated, active mind.
Section 1. The myth of madness and breaking the stigma.
See, people often accidentally lump talking to yourself into the same bucket as clinical conditions like schizophrenia. But there's a massive distinction here. Clinical conditions involve uncontrolled, external-feeling auditory hallucinations. Normal self-talk, on the other hand, that is intentional. It consists of controlled, verbalized thoughts. You are actively generating the speech, and you are entirely in the driver's seat. Psychologists actually break this down into 2 main categories. You've got inner speech, which is basically that silent narration running in your head, and then external self-directed speech, which is when you let those thoughts out loud. But whether it's a completely silent internal dialogue or you're speaking to an empty room, this is an incredible psychological tool. It literally turns your voice into a laser-focused targeting system for your attention.
Section 2. The science of inner speech and how your brain develops. To really get this, we have to look at Lev Vygotsky. Back in the 1930s, this Russian psychologist laid out a brilliant timeline showing how this habit actually evolves. He hypothesized that outward play talk is absolutely essential for cognitive development. It starts in childhood, where kids literally narrate their play to build mental muscle and emotional regulation. Then, by adolescence, that dialogue internalizes. But here's the kicker for adulthood. We never actually outgrow it. We just learn to bring it back out strategically when we're facing complex tasks.
And the crazy part is this external processing really does help us learn. Take the number 53, for example. Back in a 2001 study, researchers gave 53 adults a bunch of tricky tasks, stuff like complicated computer problems and folding origami. And guess what? Every single one of those 53 participants talked to themselves at some point. The self-talk absolutely spiked during the hardest, most unfamiliar tasks, and then it naturally faded out as they got the hang of the origami folds. It's hard proof that vocalizing actively aids your memory and your learning process. If you want a way to picture this, think of silent thinking as a crowded subway station during rush hour. Tabs open everywhere, people bumping into each other. It's chaotic, it's loud. But speaking those thoughts out loud, that acts like an organized, high-level cognitive board meeting. You're literally creating order out of the chaos in real time.
Section 3. Upgrading your brain's focus and the neural symphony.
So what exactly is happening up there when you externalize your thoughts? It's basically a chain reaction. Step 1, your speech center activates. Step 2, your auditory cortex engages because, well, you're hearing your own voice. And step 3, your problem-solving prefrontal cortex fires up. You have multiple regions of your brain firing simultaneously. This neural symphony dramatically reduces your cognitive load and makes you incredibly efficient. Let's look at a 2012 supermarket search study that really hammered this home. Researchers asked subjects to repeat the name of an item while scanning grocery shelves. And when they searched for a familiar item while vocalizing its name, their search times were actually faster. Why does that happen? Because saying the name of a familiar object out loud acts kind of like dragging a computer file right to the dead center of your screen. It sharpens your reflexes and anchors your visual attention exactly where it needs to be. Now, if you're still feeling a little silly about muttering to yourself, you're in incredibly good company. We're talking about a literal genius roster here. Albert Einstein used to walk around Princeton talking through his equations out loud. Nikola Tesla narrated his inventions into existence. Beyoncé has totally admitted she talks herself through complex choreography. Surgeons do it during intense procedures to prevent mistakes. Even collegiate tennis players have been shown to dramatically increase their focus and accuracy just by saying out loud, "This next serve is going to be perfect."
Section 4. When self-talk turns toxic, entering the danger zone.
Of course, we do have to talk about the dark side of this, because not all inner monologues are helpful. There is a really stark contrast between your inner critic and your inner coach. The inner critic is that toxic, ruminating voice whispering, "You're going to embarrass yourself," or "You messed up again." Letting that negative self-talk run wild is highly predictive of anxiety and depression. But then you have the inner coach. That's your instructional MVP voice. It acts like a personal trainer stepping in to say, "Hey, take a deep breath. You can handle this."
And that's exactly where cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, comes into play. It's a psychological treatment totally focused on recognizing those negative thought patterns. CBT empowers you to fight back against that bully living in your brain. So instead of just accepting a thought like, "I can't do this," you actively flip it into a compassionate reflection like, "I'm learning and I'm improving." To really control that narrative, you kind of need to know what your default style is. There are 4 main styles of self-talk. First, you have the narrator, providing a running commentary that shows some really high self-awareness. Second is the problem solver, which is all about deep analytical thinking. Third, the emotional supporter, providing self-compassion to calm anxiety. And finally, the rehearser, practicing conversations in advance, which highlights strong social awareness. So, which one of those do you naturally default to?
Section 5. Harnessing your mental superpower and becoming the observer.
Okay, think about this specific phrase for a second. "Caleb, you are prepared for this test." Notice the phrasing there. Instead of saying, "I am prepared," the speaker uses their own name. And it turns out, shifting your language from I to you creates this immediate, incredibly powerful psychological distance. Psychologists call this technique distanced self-talk. By addressing yourself by name or even in the second or third person, you instantly shift from being an overwhelmed participant in the moment to an objective observer. It completely transforms a stressful situation. Instead of internalizing, "I am anxious," you observe, "I'm feeling anxious right now." And studies show this significantly reduces stress and boosts performance right before a big presentation or any highly anxious event.
So, how can we actually maximize this secret weapon every single day? First off, be kind to yourself. Monitor your tone. Second, use it strategically whenever you're stuck or trying to learn something brand new. Third, context matters. Singing or talking yourself through a problem in the shower is fantastic. Loudly debating yourself on a quiet public bus? Maybe not the best idea, so just keep it internal in those moments. And finally, actively step in and change those negative narratives the second you hear them. Whatever you do, never internalize shame for using this tool.
Which brings us to a final question I want to leave you with. What are you going to talk yourself into today? Remember, you aren't crazy, you aren't broken. When you talk to yourself, you are simply consulting the smartest, most reliable expert in the entire room, yourself. So embrace it, use it to your advantage, and I guarantee it's going to change the way you navigate the world. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.